the sound of 8 hooves galloping make their way up the road to hell. Odin rides Sleipnir to the gates of death to seek wisdom. His son, the shining god Baldr, dreams of death. Baldr's death is the hinge that the narrative of the Aesir swings on. It's the definitive point where the Golden Age ends and the cracks of Ragnarok begin to form. But what happened, and why is Baldr so important? Well, we need to start by talking about who Baldr is. He's the second son of Odin, Thor's younger brother. And basically, he's perfect. He's beautiful, wise, well-loved by all. I think this line from the Prose Edda sums it up pretty nicely. He is the best, and all praise him. Although Snorri also throws in this detail. But one of his characteristics is that none of his decisions is effective. I'm not positive where Snorri is getting this from, but it does make sense. Baldr may be perfect, but the world he lives in is not. And so while his perfection may be admirable, it isn't exactly implementable, or at least not until the world is reborn. So that's Baldr, the perfect, shining god. But what about his death? Like many elements in Norse mythology, it is foretold. Odin learns about it in the seeress's prophecy. Frigg, Baldr's mother, has prophetic abilities herself, so she has some awareness of it. But the story really begins with Baldr having dreams, visions of his death, which prompt Odin's ride to hell. When Odin arrives, he sees a great hall being prepared for a feast, a rather strange sight in the land of the dead. He resurrects a seeress to ask about it, and in her own words, she says that it's Baldr's welcoming party, and that Odin's blind son, Hod, will be Baldr's killer. Hod is where the myth gets complicated. We don't know a lot about him outside of his role in this story. The Prose Edda only tells us that he is strong, that he is blind, and that people don't like to mention him all that much. But the complication comes in with Hod's level of agency within the story. In older versions of the myth, as well as related myths in Germanic and Finnish traditions, the choice to kill Baldr is Hod's, or Hod's counterpart, and a lot of weight is put on the fraternal figure's need for just vengeance. But Strolson, supported by the Lokasina, involves Loki, and this is the version of the myth that we'll continue to look at in this video. Which brings us to Frigg, who sets out on her own journey to prevent, or at least postpone, Baldr's death. She travels across the cosmos to every natural force, and asks and receives a promise not to harm Baldr. This just goes as a further testament to how great Baldr is. Nothing wishes him ill. Frigg took oaths that Baldr would not be harmed by fire and water, iron and all kinds of metals, stone, the earth, trees, diseases, animals, birds, poisons, and snakes. But there is one plant that Frigg sees that she just thinks is too young, too innocent to pose a real threat. She skips over mistletoe and returns to Asgard. Side note, this singular weakness is very much like the Achilles heel in the Greco-Roman tradition, or, kryptonite. Anyway, Baldr is for the moment safe and seemingly invincible, and for some ridiculous reason, the Aesir believe this calls for a good round of throw things at Baldr. I like to imagine that this started as a cautious test, like Frey or Tyr or someone just wanted to make sure that the oaths would hold. But it's just as likely that the Aesir got hammered and someone thought it would be really funny to lob a spear at Baldr. For whatever reason, this becomes the god's new hobby. Throw all of creation at Baldr and nothing will hurt him. Loki sees this and is angered. He disguises himself as Frigg's maid and goes to ask, is there anything that could hurt dear, sweet Baldr? Frigg confesses that she overlooked mistletoe, and Loki vanishes immediately. Later, he reappears at the designated throw stuff at Baldr's spot, and makes his way over to Hod, who sits just set apart from the festivities. Remember, Hod is blind, so he can't participate, unless he has some help. Loki hands him the mistletoe and says, come on, I'll get you involved. I'll guide your hand. All you need to do is throw with your great strength. The two approach, the others laugh and egg them on. Loki positions Hode just right, and he throws. Loki gets out of there as soon as possible, but Hode isn't so lucky. Not being able to see, it's easy to imagine him standing there, largely confused why everyone has gone silent. After all, he's the only one who can't see Baldr, lying on the ground dead, a spear of mistletoe through his heart. Hode will go on to be killed by Vali. Much like Vidar, vengeance is Vali's only real purpose in myth. It may seem harsh, a brash action taken in a moment of chaos, or it's a holdover from those myths where Hode had more agency in the killing. Remember, those myths largely focused on the father's need for just vengeance. He couldn't just go out and kill his own son, but if there was a third son, well, that's a different story. But the specifics don't really matter as much as the end result. Baldr's dead. The shining god, the embodiment of all that's good. It's no wonder that his death triggers off the long winters, the destruction of Yggdrasil, and the fate of the gods. Baldr's body was put upon his ship. Many gifts were brought, and many came to bear witness. Thor lit a flame with his hammer, and a giantess pushed it out to sea. The Aesir do try to bring Baldr back, a story that I covered in a previous video, linked in the description, but this is where we'll end today. Tomorrow we'll take a look at one final character in Ragnarok, Fenrir.